Yo guys, what is up? I was gonna make a video about Kick 3 and all of my list, I guess, of complaints or features that I wish it had or whatever, and I just caught wind of this video from Sonic Academy. Just blew my mind. They actually added this feature that I wish that it would have. So I'm gonna try doing a react video. So let's go.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another Sonic Academy video tutorial. In this one we're going to take a look at the new features that I'll be launching in Kick 3.1. So this is a beta that's going out shortly, and we're going to run through all of the new features and enhancements we've made to this version. Okay, so I've got our Kick 3 update loaded here. There's quite a few new features to go through, so I'm going to go through them one by one. I've got a list of them here. So the first big one, or the first couple of big ones, we now have a couple new envelopes. So we've got this, I'll start with this one. So this is our distortion envelope. So you click on it and you'll see this new envelope pops up. And this allows you to adjust the mix of that distortion on your, just on a sub layer. And you'll notice the waveform updates that as you increase that, and then you can use your envelope to control that over time. So we can have the distortion going the whole way across, or we can have it only maybe affecting the start of our kick and coming in, or sorry, not affecting the start and coming in a bit later.
What? Dude, that is exactly what I wanted to do in this theoretical feature that I was going to talk about. I was thinking the Harmonics section would have been cool to have an envelope automation built into the plugin. The pitch and amp is great and all. I mean, these days everyone's using like Shaperbox, or like basically the automation is built into the plugin, and that's cool and all, but really where that would shine is a synth, which I consider Kick 3 to be somewhat of a synth, that you're generating a kick's fundamental sine wave from scratch. So to be able to then automate in time certain effects, they should have envelope for everything in Kick 3, in my opinion. Like, it might be too overwhelming of options, but when all you're working with is like a sine wave and various distortions, yeah, this is enough right here. This is a great start, and I can tell by the symbol here that they're probably going to have the same feature with Harmonics. Let's see.
Okay, and then you can also, if you click the left and right buttons, you can cycle through the different distortion models we have, and you can also click this drop down and you can select them from a list. A couple of them you'll need to dial back a bit.
Do you guys realize how powerful that rectify feature is for more applications than just making kick samples? This is basically like, normally I would turn to modular synthesis like VCV rack, or I'll just do what I can in Serum by monitoring it with an oscilloscope very closely and getting parameters tweaked and automated in the time domain. But it's just easier to use kick, where it is the time domain basically in like a one-shot style, hit a button and it plays your envelope. So for more than just samples, I mean, you can use these rectified signals for voltage control in your synthesizers or in VCV rack. You know, you can do anything you want with it really, but that's a powerful feature, to have a frequency specific sine wave generator that you can determine its exact amplitude and length. And now you can do this, and it's variable over time in an envelope. That's pretty exciting. Let's continue.
But you can get really creative with this. The next one, moving on from that, is our Harmonics tab. So same kind of thing. If you click on that, you'll get a new envelope here. You'll notice that the envelope's top left gets sort of deselected. And if you click it away from any of these, it'll go back to where you were. So if we click on the Harmonics, you can do the same thing. So This is your mix knob, and then you've got, if you've got any harmonics dialed in here.
That's one small gripe I had about the harmonics section, is that the first harmonic is like kind of redundant when it's already present. And if anything, I think the first harmonic in the harmonic structure of, I guess, their harmonics section should be automatically at a different phase of the original sine wave that's already generated. That way it does something. At least it would fold it back on itself, or silence it, or skew it, or whatever. Because they did actually give you the ability now to change the phase, I believe. Let me double check on that, actually. Okay, so you can change the ratio. Oh, you know what? They actually made it where the first harmonic... Okay, so upon double checking, yes, the first harmonic does something, which is if you turn it all the way down, your fundamental disappears. But it pretty much does nothing else. What I'd rather have it do, when you go in the harmonic tab here, you can change the ratio slightly. Can we type it in? 1.02 or something. And now, what it should do is, if I turn it up, what it should do is skew the fundamental slightly, basically on its journey to phase cancellation, because the frequency ratio is slightly off. So let's see if we put a little more drastic. Let's try 1.20. Let's see what that does. Yeah, so at this point, the first harmonic's kind of useless. I mean, you can even just make it a wave folder or something. I think the harmonics structure should begin at the second harmonic, because the first harmonic's already being generated. Like, it's like unnecessary to have it there. And if it's gonna be there anyway, make it do something. Make the first harmonic just be like a type of wave folder. But I guess that's not really necessary now either, seeing that we got that same functionality now enveloped in the distortion, which is brilliant. Because I was crafting many like kicks and like waveforms where I was trying to use the harmonics to juke out the limitation of what I have with kick 3 and create certain wavefold shapes with phase cancellation and whatnot. I ended up having to use multiple subs and changing the phase of the sub, which brings me to the old list of features I wish kick 3 would have. Maybe it does. We haven't finished the video yet. But in the harmonic structure here, if you could not only change the gain, ratio, and decay, but also be able to change the phase, that would be huge. Because just having things 50% out of phase or 180 degrees gives you a lot of possibilities for phase cancellation. Like, for example, I could have two ratios of 2 here. And then when one is up, it's creating this wavefold, right? Which is double the frequency of the first harmonic. So every other oscillation, it's going to create a new shape in the waveform. But if you had a second one of the same harmonic and you were to change its phase, which I guess I can only demonstrate by creating another click track. Let me just open a initialized preset. Okay, so here's, and then will it let me copy this sub? Okay, so I guess I'll have to save this as a preset. So let's make sure it's a worthy preset. I'll set this at C. Make sure it's on Snap. Let's do C1. This will just be like literally 33 hertz C1 sine wave. So let's save this as a sub preset. I'm gonna call it 33 hertz C1 sine init. Yeah, because I'm boring like that. Oh, and then here you can already see the whole attempting to phase distort thing I was talking about. Essentially, if we grab another sub here and load that same preset, and if we look at both, which I love that feature, by the way, that is so helpful to be able to toggle on and off your scope, I guess, so to speak. If we look here, we can actually rotate the phase, and that is so powerful because right here at 180, I have silence, because for every positive value, there's a negative value erasing it. But if I were to slightly drift the phase out of that, the sum of this would be some type of skewed waveform, which we can view if I open a scope here. Okay, so here's VCV rack. If I just zoom in on this guy, should be able to get a nice visual. Ignore the green line up here. This is just the reference frequency that I like to have visual. And actually this would be Y. So like if I actually just create, oh, and ignore the project in the background. That's I was just messing around with something earlier. But then I saw this video and I was like, I gotta do something. Okay, so if I just loop this envelope, or sorry, this MIDI. Oh yeah. Let me just make the length forever and ever. Okay, make sure these are aligned. Right, okay. So if I skew the phase, you'll see at 179, it's almost completely canceled. So nothing appears on the scope, except for this quieter sine wave. But if you increase if you change the phase a little bit, you basically are turning up the volume of that sine wave, except sort of. It is changing its superposition, so to speak. It's like position in time has been shifted slightly. But since they're both perfect sine waves, when you rotate it, all it's gonna do is appear to reduce its volume. Now, the rate that you do that is important. If you were to do that in time, like say you did it really fast, you'll actually create more than just, like if you had a VCA on a sine wave with automation and it was basically doing amplitude modulation, the sine wave would cleanly go to silence and back. But with phase cancellation, which seems similar because it's going to silence and back, at the rate you do it and the direction that you do it, it will actually change its pitch as well, because it's changing its information based on time, its position in time. I don't know the like true science how to explain that easier, but that's just something I noticed. So anyway, tangent's getting long, but if you could change the phase of each harmonic, then you could create copies of those harmonics and then do interesting things, say like wave folding, or just creating like, how else do I say it? Kind of confusing myself. Let's just get back to the video.
And then if you've got any harmonics dialed in here. Historically, harmonics would just sort of be mixed in either 100% down to 0, and it would be across the whole waveform. But here we can use this envelope to have it only sort of coming in at whatever point in the wave you want.
Okay, so this is like probably the exact application that this was needed for, because you want the beginning of your kick, the transient here, to be somewhat pure, to have that like coherent thump and impact and I guess professional sound. There's a lot of kicks that are just people that are making the samples, they just get a bunch of other kicks and layer them together and you get this like phase canceled mess. and that's why all the kicks sound muffled or just not coherent. But in this case, you can now give the kick the exact character you want, especially if you're already into synthesis like I am. Like I do modular synthesis and VCV rack and Euro rack, and I work with waveforms on that level where it's like the waveform itself. I don't really think of sound and samples in terms of like you just have your sample and then you put effects over it. You're always just saucing up your sample or what material you have already. And really all you're doing is when you're adding to your sample, you're just taking away, because the less and less pure it gets, the more and more processed it gets, the more and more your wave is going to have cuts into it. It'll become convoluted and less coherent. But at the same time, that doesn't mean all music and sound should just be pure waves, because that would be too coherent. It would be terrible, and you'd have to put like Soothe 2 on everything. So things like this is an amazing tool at this point where you can get the best of both worlds. You can create the character of your kick if you want it to do the whole square wave taper thing, which is a trick I've been doing already. If you haven't seen my free sample pack, check out that video. But you can see in the time lapse the long processes that I went through to simply get this effect where the beginning of the kick won't be as affected, but towards the end I want the compression to kind of like come in and square off the waveform on the tail end, because you get a healthy balance then, that when your kick has lost its transient energy like here, it starts to go down and you lose amplitude energy, but you'll gain that perception back once it has harmonic energy added. So you're trading off amplitude energy for harmonic energy, because now instead of it just being the main, I guess it'd be this way, the main fundamental frequency is high in energy and not much here. There are harmonics giving it character if it's more than a sine wave, but it's mostly not. It's just like here. But as this amplitude turns down, other frequencies turn up, so you get this kind of like balanced perception of the kick's presence even as it's decaying, which most people achieve by simply soft compressing the entire kick. And so instead of a sine wave, you have like harmonics the whole time, but then it sounds dynamically flat, like there's no way to compensate other than to create artificial dynamics, which I've done too. And you put basically amplitude boost on the beginning of the kick, but then the spectral balance is weird because you hear an amplitude change, but the spectral content is the same. So to do a kick this way, I guess the cat's out of the bag now, unless people don't realize that. But if you're watching this video, definitely start making your kick libraries like this. Start your kick clean, and then add in the character, color, or whatever you want to call it of your kick that differentiates them from each other in your library towards the tail end. Put that stuff towards the tail end of it. This is basically, kick 3 is goated forever now. So let's continue.
And you can sort of combine these together. Moving on from those two updates, we also have an update to our click section. So if we go across the clicks, you can now use a pre-delay, which will allow you to shift that click on a wee bit for those of you that wanted that feature. So use this here.
You know what would be a crazy move for kick 3? I'm liking this so far, but this just makes me think about the whole snapback thing that Cable Guys released. And again, this is something where like things like everything Cable Guys is doing basically, where you slap it on your source sound after the fact, and then like it works. I know their transient detection is accurate and whatnot, but it's just odd to like have that kind of faith in it where, you know, anything that could go wrong on some way that would affect it, maybe like a DC offset or something, I don't know. There's something that will like make it not perfect. At least that's my skepticism about that. It might not be true, maybe it's perfectly accurate. But in any case, kick 3, where your entire waveform and the processing and everything is determined in a window of time, like in all the envelope automation and whatever, this would be the perfect place to have some type of snapback feature tab or something as well, where you just click a tab and it'll show before all of this that you're doing with the kick sample. Also, where's snare synthesis anywhere? Like, everyone makes snares in like these really crazy methods of using other synths that weren't made for it and processing it and going around things. Like, why is there not a like snare synth like Kick 3? And I know you can make your snare in Kick 3, but wouldn't it be easy if there was a dedicated FM oscillator, say for example, to get those like inharmonic overtones of a snare, but where of course they did some kind of fancy algorithm that will make it snare like. And so basically all you have to do from then is shape your envelopes to taste and get the snare you're after. So they're pretty much halfway there already with Kick 3. They don't even have to make it a separate plugin called Snare. They could simply add all these features in tabs, which if they're worried about simplicity, I already think there is too much being displayed in the GUI. Really, they should have just 2 layers. It should be more like Kick 3 on a surface is your basic stuff like they had in Kick 2. And then when you want all the advanced stuff, you click like a cog and toggle it. And it's like advanced mode, and suddenly you get everything. And there's more features that I was gonna do in my complaint video, where the effects section, I wish it was more modular than it was, because it seems like it's really modular. But if you look here, really it's just 2 insert lanes that you can switch these 2 effects, their order, and then that's it. And there's really no clear line to the routing. Would be nice if it just had lines to show you the signal path. I'm gonna assume that this is simply a parallel chain, these 2 inserts, you know, since they're called inserts. And then those both go into your main chain here. It'd be so much better if these modular blocks were truly modular and you had kind of a signal path like FM synths have, that like those blocks with lines connected. This halfway looks like that, so why not just have a tab similar to these tabs up here somewhere that you click and it will give you a different algorithm, if that's what you can call it, a different signal path that connects these blocks in a certain order, so that way you can do certain effects to your liking. And why are we limited to 6 blocks when we can just have a scroll or something, you know? I don't know. I'll do that. I'll do a whole video on my complaints for Kick 3, but right now I'm very happy to see this update, because they're adding really wicked stuff that I thought they should have added anyway.
I think you can use up to 250 milliseconds, but usually you'll just be in this sort of range here. Next up we've got, right, okay, under the subs we have, this actually is not the correct version. Sorry about that, I actually had a slightly older version loaded up, so I was going to go through this update to the nodes, but I noticed that it wasn't actually working. So now it's updated. We've got a change to...
So here's the thing. In the video I was gonna make about my impressions and gripes and wishes about Kick 3, this cut they just did, this inconvenience, I know he said he just had like a different version of his preset loaded, but I feel like the amazingness of Kick 3 is causing people to kind of gloss over the things that are glaringly wrong with it, which if we acknowledge that a little more, I think they'd be able to fix it. So that's why I'm going to make a video in a more kind of complaining light to highlight these features that I think should be there if they're not there, or these bugs that I feel like are bugs. Like there's a simple one that has to do with nodes, where when you create a node and then you click it to move it, it could just be operator error, but so far what I've noticed when I'm just trying to click the node after creating it and move it, which is something you would normally do, right? Unless you're gonna click exactly where you want the node to be. But what if you wanted it to be perfectly on G1 because your other node's on G1 and you want the pitch to be flat. That's a pretty common application everyone's gonna do, right? But when I click on the node to move it, it assumes I'm trying to change the curve of the line between the nodes. And I just think that's like kind of annoying. Like I'm never gonna use that feature, and if I am, like if I want logarithmic curves, I'd rather just do like Ableton and hold Alt or something to activate that feature. And no, I don't like the shaper box approach where you create like a half node that like isn't a node. I don't prefer that either. I like the Ableton way. It's so simple. You just draw your straight line, and if you want it to be curved, you hold Alt and drag the line. That would be a lot easier in my opinion, but let's move on.
To how you can enter manual nodes, or you'll notice when the nodes get down to a certain level, I think it's maybe 5,000 or something, you'll start to see decimal points, maybe 1,000, yeah, 1,000 hertz. So you'll see the decimal points. There were decimal points in the nodes before, they just weren't being shown on screen. You can now see that, and you can also, if you right click on a node, you can enter a value and you can put whatever you want. So you can put down 2 decimal points and you can set it to a value manually, like that. Next on from that, we have gate release times. So let's load an 808 up. Long one maybe.
Hold up, did you guys see that preset list? So is this what it's like to have all the kick libraries? That's insane. Like, I never really look at their expansions as something like worth my dollar. Seeing how much information is here, you gotta remember, this is more than like a sample library. All of these presets are tweakable. Maybe that's something worth looking into. When I open my kick, it does not look like this, that's for sure. That is an insane preset list.
Okay, so in your settings, we now have a gate release time, so you can set this to whatever you want. So a lot of people, or well, some people were complaining they didn't have control over this value, so whatever you set this to is what your release time will be on at the end of when you've got this gate mode on. I think it's usually 50 milliseconds, so you can set it to whatever you want. I'll just set it back to default. Another improvement in the...
Okay, so again, they're glossing over the inconvenience of the plugin, where the foundation's already set, man, with the way everything is enveloped in time. Why is everything not just in a visualizer of this envelope, like Shaper Box? So like everything happening in the plugin could easily be visual, which is like, why did Serum get really popular after Massive? Because like only like crazy engineers knew what they were doing with Massive to really get that extra 10% out of it that no one else can, because they probably were looking at scopes and everything to like see exactly what's happening versus just, oh, this sounds cool and I'm gonna like automate this. People that are more analytical who will like zoom in with scopes and see how does this wavetable affect that one? What is the phase relationship, you know, and whatever. And sometimes you think doing that extra mile won't get anything useful, but the surprising thing is the more you dig, the more you find, and you'll find this like one artifact or this one phenomena that happens with a certain combination of something, and now you have something no one else has. You just put it together, and it's weird because everyone has access to it, but no one thinks to do it unless they did the exact same thought pattern that you did to discover it, or a different thought pattern, you know, whatever. But like, as long as they discover the same thing. Now, anyway, my point is, with the gate feature they've added here, why is that not just visualized in the kick? Like, for example, up here in the timeline right here, you could just have like Ableton, these like triangles, and just determine the gate length right there. And you can have a number readout like he did in that menu, but the number value will just be displayed like in small numbers right there. And have both, have it in the settings too. Why isn't it, you know, everything just on the timeline?
The sub area, we have the length control. So if you hold shift on your keyboard, you can now select beat grid markers. So if you want to set your length to...
Holy sh... Dude, it's over, man. Kick 3 is the king. This is what I mean. Kick is so controversial because it has these amazing settings and features that make it a unique instrument that has always been needed. And the only way I think things like this can get better is if it was just integrated in your DAW, honestly. Like if Ableton had like a specified sample editor that had a synthesizer, you know, because I do consider this a synthesizer technically. It's like creating your stuff from scratch. There should be more stuff like this. In fact, one of my favorite methods of synthesis is additive synthesis, which is unfortunate because I don't have a copy of Harmor because I don't have FL Studio, as they call it these days. That stuff was incredible. The amount of control you can have over all the harmonics and the things you can map to convolve those harmonics, for lack of a better word. There probably is a better word, I just can't think of it, but that doesn't matter. Yeah, my approach is usually constructing stuff from nothing, ground up. That way it's already the way you want it. You don't have to like use an EQ or a compressor or whatever afterwards because you've already made it properly the way you want it. So like for example, in Kick 3, if you make a kick sample and then after that you go and put an EQ on it or a compressor, why would you do that? Like, unless you didn't know what you were doing in the synthesis stage. I guess the only acceptable reason other than that would be you want like a specific color of your compressor, which is just the rate it's compressing, which is still something you can do right here in the envelope. That's just my opinion, I guess, but do with that what you will.
1/16, 32, 8, quarter, whatever it is you want to set it to for whatever reason. And you can also type that in. So if you just type in 1/2, that'll work it out based on whatever your tempo of your track is. So 1/8. I'll work that out. Another thing you might have noticed is that they simplify section.
Yo, that's low-key your millisecond calculator, just hidden in Kick 3 now, so you don't have to go to the website anymore when you're working in a certain tempo and you want to know the exact milliseconds of your fourth bar. There you go. I mean, we'll see how accurate it is, but nothing has to be that perfect.
At the top right here, that's been moved. It's now in a menu, so if you want to simplify, you can click that and you can use the same slider in here.
That was a good choice in my opinion. That slider was very tempting to like click all the time. When I realized what it did, I was like, this is a feature I'm not gonna really need pretty much ever unless it's a certain specific case, like maybe I'm using one of their presets from an expansion pack and I need to simplify something. However, I don't know about this floating menu you can drag around. It could have just been like a small spot somewhere else, you know. It doesn't have to be like this pop out. I don't like when plugins get messy. Like this one's already borderline messy on how complex the GUI is getting, and it's not in any obvious signal flow. But when plugins like, especially like Melda, and I can't really think off the top of my head, but there's a lot of plugins where you open sub windows in the plugin and it's like it becomes its own DAW at that point. I don't know, it's a bit much, but let's see. A small little complaint, small one.
That was just to accommodate this longer sub preset section, so we can see the file names. Sometimes they got a bit long in this section and it was getting cut off, so we got that there now. If we move over to our browser, we've got a bunch of new features in here. I'll go through the first one, which is our audition. So let's just pick a section. So when you turn...
No way. I haven't even let them audition it yet, but no way. These guys are really doing it right.
Turn on audition. It's gonna preview.
Like, I get it. The only difference is hitting your key while you're going through your presets, but like, you know, we don't got time for that.
And that will also work in your click section. So you've got audition on. You can now cycle through and hear everything, or you can turn that off and it won't do it. We've also got some sorting, so we can sort by recent, you can sort by name, and you can go up or down on that there. So it's useful whenever you've got a lot of new imported or analyzed files, you can find the most recent.
Okay, so might be a counterpoint against what I was saying earlier about adding too much complexity to plugin, but what if they did where you can import your entire sample libraries or whatever, right, for your one-shots that you're going to use as click samples or layers, and they had a tagging system, simply kind of like EXO or Triaz, where you can tag it by like some kind of, AI, but it's really just gonna map your samples in the same way Ableton does already anyway, where it's just by frequency and rate and length and whatever. Or what if this integrated with Ableton's tagging system? That might be asking a little too much, but that would be cool, right? But also importantly, like if you're using layers and you're making a kick library for a specific genre, which is something I can imagine being usually the case, it would be helpful to have the tags for your certain layers for genre. For example, like in lo-fi, you would want to layer all these lo-fi type of sounds, which wouldn't be as useful if you were making like a house kick, because then it wouldn't be as coherent. That's cool that you can sort by recent and other things than just alphabetical, but maybe a tagging system could be cool.
Not. Moving over to our effects section. We have a few new effects in here, so let's just load up our menu. You'll notice we now have, let's see, high gain. We'll maybe get a different preset here. Effects. Again. We've also got...
See, not to nitpick, but even how he missed that preset and had to open the tab again, these are things that we do as users. And as users, we want to work as fast and straight line to our goal, a sound in our head, whatever you want to call it, as possible. So when they're doing this type of mistake and they gloss over it like it's no big deal, this should be important information for them to create subtle improvements. Like, for example, if this was, like earlier I said, if it could just be scroll, then you could make everything a little bigger and easy to click on, because at the same time, no one wants to open Kick 3 to be full screen, so it'd be easier if you can scale it in the window of the plugin. And I don't mind scrolling up and down. It's less annoying to me than pop-up menus and pop-in windows and whatever, drop-down menus. I prefer just scrolling,
A ping pong delay. We have a Verbitron, which has come across from Anna. That's the 3 new effects that have been put in.
Okay, so we get another, I think it's convolution. I don't know how they're doing it on a technical level, but basically it's just convoluting your waveform, so I'm going to call it convolution. Why isn't there like an actual IR effect? Imagine how powerful that would be if it even rendered like in the waveform view, which is something I think they should also have. They should have a master waveform view. And what I mean by that, because I know you can take all the layers and turn them on and off. You can turn all your layers on and see them, but how do you see the sum of the layer without rendering the kick and dragging it out and looking at it in like your DAW? They should have another tab towards the end of your entire chain that shows you that shows the sum of your waveform rendered in all of its time during the envelope, which is basically what you're triggering when you hit your key, is the envelope playing all this sound and automation and information from start to finish, and then everything after that doesn't matter. Say, for example, this delay they added. I don't want to think of the delay as something that is like I put after the Kick 3 plugin and it's going to move on even after the envelope ends. I want it to be baked in and see the waveform. If I want it to tail off you know, past the kick in an example of like a delay like that, I would want to see that from start to finish. Like it'll expand the envelope view and everything. But I don't want to think ever of anything in this plugin to be existing outside of the envelope. That is the strength of what makes this plugin different, is that everything exists in that frame of time. In my opinion, if they added some different effects, I feel like would be more useful for kicks and snares anyway, right? We don't exactly need some of the effects that are in there, like the compressor that's in there. It doesn't make sense to me. Like if you wanted compression and color and whatever, you can actually just do that. Or how about they get fancy with it and it, you know, capture whatever curvature is creating that color of the compressor and then put that as an effect in the envelope, sort of like the distortion, where it'll just basically crossfade your waveform into that shape. So that way you can create the compression curve with the amplitude envelope and everything exactly how you want. Simulate your compression, which is basically your dynamics, right? You're creating your dynamics to be perfect first. So this is like an additive kind of mindset, not like I'm going to make something and then subtract from it to get it shaped down to what I want. I want to build it up to what I want. So if you really want the color of the compressor, whatever the compressor is adding to it, first you have to know what does that look like that the compressor is doing to it. So for example, like if you have that analog compression where it keeps the beginning of your transient nice and tall, but then it kind of smooths the rest of it, you can just know that that looks like that and create it in the synth. But if you wanted to really get that color, which you can't go in and draw the nodes so minutely perfectly to get that color, then they should have another enveloped effect, kind of like the distortion, where it chooses the curvature and it will somehow, I don't know, this is again, maybe I'm asking too much, but they can figure it out if they coded all this thus far, where it'll take your waveform, create nodes all across it, and then crossfade those nodes into the shapes they would be if they were being colored by your compressor. I don't know. Maybe it's even simpler than that. They'll find a way if they wanted to. I think it'd be more useful than to just have a compressor on the end. Or maybe it is just better to just have the compressor on the end, but then I end up having to go back and change the dynamics of the source material going into the compressor to then get my dynamics back where I wanted them. But now they have the color, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think? Leave a comment below.
If we go back to our main menu, we have a few quality of life improvements. So, well, actually, I'll maybe cover the favorites first. So if we go into here, you'll notice we now have this heart section. And this is a favorites tab. So yours will actually maybe say favorites here, and then green, yellow, orange, red, I think it is.
That is so sick. I love the color scheme and everything. Like, it's giving me the Ableton collections vibe. You know, I really love that.
This is for categorizing your presets. So if you go through your presets and you like the sound of one, let's pick one in here. Say you wanted this one, you can right click on it and you can assign it a color. You can assign it multiple colors, you can clear the colors, and you can also use the keys on your keyboard. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 correspond to the colors. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Bro, that's straight up Ableton, man. All right, that's cool though. No complaints here. That is really sick.
5. And same 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll take it away. So if we put that in 1, that in 2, 3, 4, 5, and go into our favorites, got that in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can also shift and click across a few of them and assign them with your keyboard, or unassign them, whatever you want. So it's a good way to keep things categorized. Or if you
see, there's stuff like this where their like focus group is really coming through with the great ideas, man, and then they execute it and then it's amazing. But then there's just those little things that fall through the cracks, you know, and I don't know, could be better.
Like the sound of particular presets, I want to remember them for later. It works in the clicks menu too. It works in the sub menu, I think.
So here's another thing. You see how he's clicking around the whole plugin to get to what's essentially the same type of thing. Like he's getting to the drop down menus. I feel like in some way those should be closer together. There's a lot of synths that do separate their like sub presets internally or whatever. Like you have an arpeggiator and then it has its little presets, and then you have an effect and it has its little presets, and then you have your synth oscillator set up and it has its presets, and then usually they're all like in a straight line at the top. Now I know that doesn't really fit in this case, and I don't want it to look like that for Kick 3, but maybe they could find a way to put the tab inside the window that is created. Because usually when you're picking presets, you're gonna do it to each stage. You're gonna do it for this, for the sub wave, you're gonna do it for the click, you're gonna do it for whatever other layers. And instead of having to move your mouse like all around the plugin to do that, potentially misclicking and then setting yourself back more, because now you got to go up to the undo button way at the top. It'd just be more logical to have it in that window itself, where you're only clicking to get to the window in one spot, probably where it says sub preset, and then in there where it says factory DLC user, there's another kind of tab that just says I'm looking at presets for the subs, I'm looking at presets for the clicks. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Maybe comment that too.
It does. The names that you give in these sections here will copy across. So if you change this to favorite, it'll be the same name in here. So just keep that in mind. A couple other features then. If we go to our clicks menu, you can notice on the bottom here we have under pan, we can select the defaults the stereo, but you can select mono, left or right channel. So if you want to select different channels of the stereo click that you're bringing in.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, if you don't know the input source material that you're loading for your click, why is this really useful? You know, it would be useful if you can do mid-side automation in the envelope as well. So kind of like, you know, the strength of FabFilter, how you can do mid-side and EQ. That would be amazing for Kick 3 to reach that level of plugin, which I think it's on its way to. It's just so close, it just needs a little more. But if you can do all these automation envelopes in the time of your synthesized kick here, that would be amazing if they opened up the ability to put an envelope of automation for like whatever you wanted. So imagine if you had mid-side amplitude, that you loaded a click, for example, that had an extremely high side information. You can just go into an envelope, take out the mid information completely, and have only the side, so your speakers are in opposite phase, which sounds weird on its own, until you combine it with another source that will unbalance those perfectly canceled signals. Sort of like earlier with the distortion on the mid signal of the kick. For the click on your side signal, you would have the beginning of the sample basically muted or very quiet, because you want your transient to be extremely coherent and hit. But then after that, say for example, if you're making a snare or a very reverberated or colorful kick in the stereo. Wow, apparently if my alarm goes off during the video, it just cuts the video. But anyway, so imagine the side signal comes in after your transient, which will give your kick a sense of space. And then of course that signal won't be low frequency, it'll be like high frequency information. I feel like that just helps the transient of your kick to be more coherent, because when you have a stereo transient, it's just noise. It just sounds like messy noise. So yeah, the potential of this plugin and the way it's designing everything around an envelope of time has so much power to be able to dial things in the same way you would traditionally with sounds, going through effects and just looping it over and over and then tuning it that way. But now you have it baked in, forever printed, forever savable, forever recallable, forever tweakable. There's so much power to that. Like if you buy Kick 3, if you don't own it yet, you realize just having this plugin, you can make an entire library of your own sound. That's really powerful, and you can always go back and tweak them to whatever is needed. You can use them just like you use other people's presets, where you find the one that fits the most and then just tweak it to what you want. But then you could save that one as well.
Export. You can now click on the export and it'll play that. You can also click on each layer. You can solo that.
There we go. So this is progress right there about the whole workflow and time factor, because it was really annoying to like solo the layers just to audition them, especially if you imported a kick and chose to have that last red colored layer. You would have to like play with that to solo that one, then remute it, then solo the other ones. It took too much time for just simply auditioning if you needed to audition. But now you can just hit that play button. That's pretty cool.
Without having to solo and play. For these layers down at the bottom, you can also click and drag them into new positions now. And if you hold Shift, or is it Alt? Let me just check. Alt. You can copy those layers across. So if you want to make a duplicate layer, or move the layers, or remove the layers. You can also, in your sub, you were able to extend the length. You can now shorten the length, so that'll keep all your nodes in position, changing the length of this sort of area you're working with. Okay, so that's all of the features from this beta. If you've got any feedback, please drop it into our Discord channel or onto our forums. I'll leave the links to both of those in the description below.
That is so epic. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna try to edit this all into a video, share your thoughts. What features would you like to see in Kick 3? What are common issues you run into with clicking around and it taking too much time that you have an idea perhaps it could be a little faster? What do you think is too many features for Kick 3? Maybe that they should reduce it or hide it behind an advanced tab or something like that. Leave all that below in the comments. See you next time.